In this demo of Anypoint Runtime Fabric, we'll walk through how simple it is to deploy and scale an application, and we'll show an example of its automated failover capabilities in action. Alright, let's get started. So after logging into Anypoint platform, I'll navigate to Runtime Manager, which is the central place to deploy and manage your Mule applications. On the left, we see a tab called Runtime Fabrics. This is where to go in order to create and manage each deployment of Runtime Fabric. And here I have one already deployed. I went ahead and deployed Runtime Fabric on Azure. If I were to tab over to the Azure portal, you can see all of the resources here which make up this Runtime Fabric. This looks like a lot. Don't worry. The installer provides templates for Azure and AWS to make this infrastructure provisioning really simple. All right, back to Runtime Manager. So when managing a Runtime Fabric, we're presented with a few options. The first is to specify which environment we want to allow deployments on this Runtime Fabric. This is useful in cases where we want to have a separate Runtime Fabric for production applications only, and perhaps another Runtime Fabric for all the other lower environments. The other setting here is one that I've went ahead and enabled. It's to allow inbound traffic. This enables the internal load balancing capabilities within Runtime Fabric for incoming HTTPS requests, and we'll demonstrate this when we deploy an application. So on that note, let's move on over to the Applications tab. You can see here that I have one application already running, and you can see that I have a couple of replicas of that application running as well. Let's go ahead and deploy another application. So in doing so, I get to name the application. Let's do proxy tests as the name. And then for the deployment target, you'll see that I actually get to select the Runtime Fabric that I have running in Azure. So when selecting that, you'll see that the rest of the page updates with the options that you can specify when deploying an application to Runtime Fabric. So here I can select the version of the runtime that I want to deploy with. I can specify the number of replicas. Let's go ahead and choose 2. And I get to specify the amount of cores and the amount of memory that I'd like to give this application. Right? And of course, before going any further, I need to select the application. So I'm going to go ahead and select that from Exchange. I'm going to select a simple proxy application for this demo. I'm going to go ahead and deploy this application. And so now what's happening is all of this information is sent down to this Runtime Fabric that I have running on Azure, right? And Runtime Fabric is going to go ahead and start downloading the application file. It's going to download the containerized runtime image, and it will use the rest of the metadata to deploy the application as we configured it. You can see it spinning up with 2 replicas here, right? So they're both in the starting state, so they're both spinning up. The other thing to note is I can actually go ahead and modify this deployment at any time, right? I can change the runtime version, or I can scale out horizontally across more replicas if I'd like. And I can also scale out vertically by increasing the amount of cores or memory. And the cool thing here is that each of these changes will be applied as a rolling upgrade, so there won't be any downtime during that process. And here you can see that the 2 replicas of the application are started successfully, and we should be able to test it out by clicking on the application URL. And here, basically, we're just running a simple proxy. So I should be able to hit an endpoint and get some JSON data to come back to me. And here we go. Looks like it's working as designed. And so the cool thing here is that we're actually using 2 replicas of this application with a single endpoint. And that's all possible due to the internal load balancing capabilities within Runtime Fabric. So to demonstrate the automated failover capabilities, let's switch over to our other application that we have deployed. So this is an application that has a flow that does something unique, right? What it does is it actually crashes the application. And it does that by triggering an out of memory. And so I can safely run this application within Runtime Fabric because, again, each application gets its own runtime and runs in its own containerized environment, right? So we have two versions of this application. We have two replicas running. And let's go ahead and see if we can call this route to kill this application. So let's hit the special route. All right, let's see what happens. It says generating out of heap memory error. And so before not long, we should be able to see one of these replicas go from started to something else. There we go. All right, so you can see that this replica here has just crashed, and it's in this starting state because Runtime Fabric saw this replica had crashed, and it had taken action to automatically redeploy it, right? So before long, that replica should go from starting back to started, and the status over here as well for the application deployment should reflect the same until it brings up the application again. Now, again, to show off the load balancing capabilities, since we still have one replica running, I technically should be able to run that same command again and actually kill the other replica. So let's see if we can actually go ahead and do that by just running this same command again. Okay, looks like it did that. And let me just do this a third time just to show that it should get something different because we only have two replicas running. Exactly, okay, the page is not working. So after killing both of the replicas, we see that it's not returning a response again. And if I were to go back here, you can see that now we have both of the replicas in this starting state. It looks like one replica came back and is now running again. So if I were to, let's say, just hit the application itself, you should get a response. And now it looks like both replicas of that application are now up and running, and the status of the application deployment is back and started. Right, and all of this was done without us doing anything as far as redeploying an application or causing any sort of action to Runtime Fabric. All of this was handled automatically.